The Las Vegas Raiders literally had a blockbuster deal finalized to send Maxx Crosby to the Baltimore Ravens, only for Baltimore to abruptly back out and publicly throw Crosby's health under the bus. But leaked information is now proving that the Ravens' excuse about a bad knee is a complete smokescreen to cover up a front office meltdown. This is one of the slimiest moves we have seen in recent NFL history, and the fallout is about to reshape the entire league. If you want the unfiltered truth on all these wild NFL rumors, make sure you absolutely smash that like button, share this video with your football crew, and subscribe to the channel right now. We finally have the full, unfiltered truth behind what really went down with the Maxx Crosby situation, and honestly, the details are absolutely wild. Listen to this timeline because it tells you everything you need to know about the cutthroat nature of this business. The Las Vegas Raiders were actively shopping their superstar edge rusher on Sunday night. They didn't just casually discuss it, they officially agreed to trade terms with the Baltimore Ravens. Once that handshake happened behind closed doors, Baltimore went into their free agency war room with what they thought was a master plan. The strategy was clear. They were willing to let guys like Tyler Linderbaum and Isaiah Likely walk in free agency. Their goal was to flood the market with offers to a dozen different guys, hoping to land 4 elite, Super Bowl caliber players, pair them with the newly acquired Maxx Crosby, and basically build an unstoppable juggernaut to go win a Lombardi trophy. But obviously, that dream scenario completely crashed and burned. The master plan evaporated into thin air, and Baltimore abruptly backed out of the agreement. And why did they pull the plug? The general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, Eric DeCosta, basically woke up and recognized that his football team is just not as elite as he originally thought. But they didn't just come out and admit that. No, instead they blamed Maxx Crosby's health. But honestly, when has an NFL front office ever let the actual truth get in the way of a convenient PR spin? Thanks to reports from insiders like Diana Rossini, the veil has been lifted. Rossini clarified that multiple high-level sources across the entire NFL have made it crystal clear that the Ravens had all the medical information regarding Crosby's knee and completely understood his exact recovery timeline before they ever agreed to the deal. People all over the league firmly believe that Eric DeCosta and the Baltimore front office simply got cold feet. What Rossini is confirming is exactly what so many of us suspected from the jump. Using Crosby's knee as the reason to kill this blockbuster trade is a complete and utter nonsense excuse. They are trying to spin a narrative that his knee is somehow deteriorating, which is not only incredibly frustrating, but it is deeply damaging to the player. This is where the situation shifts from just standard NFL business into something genuinely grimy and slimy. By publicly leaking that they back out because the knee is worse than expected, the Ravens are actively hurting Maxx Crosby's trade value. Other teams are going to hear that and immediately pump the brakes, wondering if there is a massive red flag that they missed. But here is the craziest part of this entire medical drama, and it is a massive detail that a lot of casual fans do not realize. The orthopedic surgeon who performed Maxx Crosby's knee surgery is the exact same world-renowned doctor who surgically repaired Patrick Mahomes' knee. It is the exact same doctor who fixed Joe Burrow's knee. And on the flip side of the equation, the doctor who was at the Baltimore Ravens headquarters inspecting Crosby's medical files was the exact same guy who handled surgeries for Malik Nabers and Dak Prescott. He is the official team doctor for the Dallas Cowboys. We are talking about the absolute top-tier, elite medical professionals in the sports world. These surgeons all know each other. They communicate constantly. The true insiders around the league are quietly confirming what really happened. They believe that Crosby's surgeon, the one who has been guiding his entire rehab process, directly told the Baltimore Ravens medical team exactly where the knee was at. There were zero secrets. When the Raiders and Ravens opened up trade dialogues on Friday, and when they officially shook hands on Sunday night, Baltimore was completely fine with the medicals. They knew the short-term recovery, they knew the long-term prognosis, and they had absolutely no issues with any of it. But a few days later they back out, point the finger at the knee, and throw one of the league's best players directly under the bus with a narrative that is almost certainly completely false. Any team doing their homework on college guys or high school prospects knows every medical detail. There is absolutely no way the Ravens were in the dark when the surgeons were openly sharing the charts. Question of the day: do you think Eric DeCosta and the Ravens played dirty by backing out and smearing Crosby's health, And which team do you actually want to see make a move for Maxx? Drop your answers down in the comments right now because I want to hear your take on this mess. The truth of the matter is that when the free agency window officially opened, the Ravens took a long, hard look in the mirror. They looked at their roster post-free agency and realized they are just not a Super Bowl competing team right now. Eric DeCosta looked at the massive cost of acquiring Crosby, which included giving up the 14th overall pick in this year's draft plus another first-round pick next year, and decided those draft assets were too valuable for a team that isn't one piece away from a ring. And frankly, from a pure football standpoint, backing out to keep the picks makes sense. But accepting a deal, getting cold feet, and then dragging a player's reputation through the mud is guaranteed to make a lot of powerful people furious. And this is not even the first time the Baltimore GM has pulled a stunt like this. A lot of fans might not remember this, but recently the Baltimore Ravens signed a massive free agent to a huge contract, only to immediately turn around and trade him to the Philadelphia Eagles. Eric DeCosta personally convinced Eagles general manager Howie Roseman that the player was completely fine and good to go. But it turns out there were major behind-the-scenes issues, and the player essentially walked away from football right after arriving in Philly. The rest of the general managers across the NFL saw exactly what Baltimore did to the Eagles. They remembered that DeCosta pulled a very similar shady move back in 2019. Now, he has done it again to the Las Vegas Raiders. Because of this toxic track record, the word on the street is that top-tier agents are actively telling their star clients to stay far away from the Baltimore Ravens. You have to understand that the NFL is heavily run by sports agents. Teams cannot just text a player directly. Everything filters through the agents, and those agents hold a massive amount of sway over where these guys choose to sign. It is a widely known secret around the league that agents are steering free agents away from Baltimore right now. That doesn't mean the Ravens cannot sign anybody, but it does mean they are going to have to severely overpay players just to convince them to show up. Compare that toxic environment to how the Las Vegas front office handles their business. Look at Jacoby Myers last year. Myers wanted out, and the Raiders didn't hold him hostage. They told him they would find a trade partner before the deadline and let him pick his destination. The Cleveland Browns actually offered the Raiders a much better trade package for Myers. But because the player wanted to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Vegas front office sent him exactly where he wanted to be. They are doing the exact same thing for Maxx Crosby. They could easily ship him to a desperate, poorly run franchise for a massive haul, but Crosby wants to play for a Super Bowl contender, and the Raiders are respecting his wishes. That is the exact polar opposite of how the Baltimore Ravens operate. So what did Baltimore do after burning the Raiders? They immediately pivoted and threw a massive bag at Trey Hendrickson, signing him to a 4-year, $112 million contract. That breaks down to about $28 million a year, which is ironically right around what Maxx Crosby is currently making, though Crosby is absolutely in line for a massive bump up to the $35 million range. Hendrickson is an incredible football player, and his stats are fantastic, but if you put on the game tape, he simply is not the same caliber of game-wrecking force that Maxx Crosby is. The Ravens settled for a lesser player, but they got to keep their 2 first-round draft picks. But where does this leave the Las Vegas Raiders? They definitely got the short end of the stick here, but they are absolutely not lowering their asking price. Diana Rossini reported that the Vegas front office is aggressively signaling to the rest of the league that the price tag remains 2 first-round picks, period. The Dallas Cowboys were heavily interested in Maxx, and there are surely other teams who were willing to meet that massive asking price. The reality of the trade market is complex. If a playoff team like the Eagles offers 2 late first-round picks, and the Ravens offer the 14th overall pick, you obviously take the Ravens deal. But with Baltimore out of the picture, those other offers are still sitting on the table. However, pulling off a trade of this magnitude takes time. You have to agree on draft compensation, get the player to waive any clauses, have the doctors thoroughly review the medicals, and negotiate a massive new contract extension. You cannot just magically pivot and finalize a completely new blockbuster trade overnight. Plus, there is a massive ticking clock hanging over this whole situation. Maxx Crosby's contract fully guarantees this coming Friday. If he is still on the roster, the Raiders are legally on the hook for his entire massive salary this season. But here is the silver lining. Maxx Crosby is not going to hold this chaotic situation against the Raiders. The Vegas front office has been incredibly loyal to him, trying their hardest to send him exactly where he wants to go. Because of that mutual respect, there is a very strong chance that Crosby and the Raiders agree to simply push that guarantee date back, maybe into July right before training camp. Mark Davis and Maxx Crosby sat down at the end of the season, looked each other in the eye, and mutually agreed that parting ways was the best move for both sides. Crosby has already mentally prepared to wear a different uniform. He is not going to suddenly change his mind. In the grand scheme of team building, it is always better to trade a superstar 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late. Just look at the hauls teams got for Devontae Adams and Antonio Brown when they were moved at the peak of their value. Right now, Crosby is easily worth a first and a second-round pick, if not 2 firsts. If Vegas waits until next year, that value could completely tank. Or if he goes out and dominates, it could skyrocket. It is a massive gamble. With Trey Hendrickson now off the market, teams that missed out on him like the Colts, the Bills, the Buccaneers, the Commanders, and the Eagles are going to be scrambling for elite pass rush help. The Colts just showed they are willing to make massive moves to acquire elite talent. Will they pull the trigger on Crosby? Will Max even approve a trade to a team like the Commanders? The dominoes are lined up, and we are just waiting for the next one to fall. It is a deeply unfortunate situation that the Ravens torpedoed this deal because they got scared, but welcome to the cutthroat reality of the NFL tampering period. How do you think the Raiders will ultimately handle this mess, and where do you predict Maxx Crosby will actually be playing when the season kicks off?